I'm Wendy Hilton. I am one of the co-owners of the Hip Homeschool Moms site, and I'm here today with Tanya Wright, who is one of our Hip Homeschool Moms team members, and with Nicolene Peck, who is the owner and founder of a company called Teaching Self-Government. So Tanya and I are here to learn a little bit more about Nicolene and about her company. And so first, I'm going to give you a little bit of bio information on Nicolene, and then we will get started. When it comes to parenting, Nicolene is a worldwide phenomenon and leader, and for good reason. Her proven system is based on 4 simple skills, and it transforms even the most out-of-control teenagers and homes from chaos to calm within days. Though she's an international speaker, author, mentor, former foster parent of many difficult and troubled teens, and even president of the Worldwide Organization for Women, Nicolene spends most of her time at home with her husband and her 4 children, which she knows will be her greatest impact and legacy. The fact that she's such an international influence while still being a stay-at-home homeschooling mom is evidence of the effectiveness of her teachings. So we're going to talk a little bit today about exactly what it is that Nicolene does and how it can help those of us who homeschool, whether we have small children, middle schoolers, teenagers. So Nicolene, if you would, probably where we need to start is if you would tell us a little bit about what teaching self-government actually means.
Yeah, sure. In fact, that is important. Every time I go to homeschool conferences, which is a lot. I end up at a lot of homeschool conferences. Every time I'm there, somebody will come up to me and say, "Oh, so you're teaching like about government?" And I say, "No, actually, this is a type of communication, a type of parenting that changes the hearts of parents and children so that they are able to create a unified atmosphere in their homes." The definition of self-government is 2 things. There's 2 parts. The first is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation. And then the second part is possessing knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them. So basically, a person is able to problem solve really well. They're able to say, if I do this, this is what happens. And if I do this other thing, then this is what happens. What kind of effect do I want for my actions? And then the second part is they're looking ahead saying, what kind of a person do I want to be? How am I going to be happy? What do I keep doing that's a mistake? And how can I fix it? And then they use cause and effect and what they're noticing about themselves to make adjustments. So a person cannot probably perfectly do this until they've had a bit of practice, but it's easy to learn the beginning steps of it. And so we teach parents about how to set up an environment in their home so that they can teach their children how to do this self-analysis. Now, with children, their brains, the front part of their brain that does all of their problem solving, is not actually fully developed until they are between the ages of 18 and 24 years old. So this is actually why it makes complete sense that they have to have parents to help them logically look at a situation and say, see how you did this? Well, this is what you should have done here, and here's why. So we need to now correct so that we don't have that problem again. They have to help them do the analysis part of problem solving. I just want to share one other really neat thing about self-government when we're talking about what it is. So not only is it a type of communication where everyone in the family takes ownership for themselves, focuses on having a change of heart and learning skills that they need in order to create that united atmosphere, but it was the foundation of our government, actually. So the founding fathers of the United States, they were raised in England, which was founded by the Anglo-Saxons. The Anglo-Saxons set up a type of government that they based on the Israelites from the Old Testament. So the Israelites had a system of government that was a self-governing system, and you see that in the Old Testament. It will talk about how they separated themselves into groups of 10s, groups of 50s, groups of hundreds. And the Anglo-Saxons saw the wisdom in that type of a structure for their society, so that's how they set up their society as well. And then the founding fathers of the United States would have been raised understanding the history of the Anglo-Saxons. That's one of the reasons they knew that the government had gone wrong. And so when they went to make a government here in the United States, they actually went back to those Anglo-Saxon roots, and they established what they called a self-governing form of government. And this is how it looks if you drew a little picture. I'll just tell you a little picture to draw, and then you'll have a picture of what it's supposed to look like in the family as well as really in the nation and the effect of it. But so if you draw a circle on a piece of paper, and in that circle you write the word self in it. So the idea of a self-governing people is that if someone has a problem, let's say I have a problem with my neighbor because their dog always comes to, do business on my lawn or something, or let's say I have a problem getting along with my spouse or with my child, or perhaps I have a problem, because I've lost my job or something like that. So let's take that one. Let's take I lost my job. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first go to that bubble of self, and I'm going to look at myself, and I'm going to say, what skills do I have that I could create employment for myself? What things can I liquidate to get the money that I need to take care of myself? That kind of thing. And if I cannot solve my problem, then I go to my next line of defense. So outside of the self circle, draw another circle around that circle. So now it looks kind of like a donut. And in that circle, write the word family in that ring. It's going to go out and kind of look like ripples is what it's going to look like. We're going to draw a few ripples. So the person, if they can't solve their own problem, they go to the next line of defense for them, which is their family unit. That's the smallest group that they're a part of. And incidentally, that family is the one that had to train the self. They are connected together because the self couldn't learn that self-government until they were properly trained by their family. So anyway, if the family can't help, if they can't get a loan or help them get education in some way or network them in some way, then they go to their next line of defense. So if you draw another ring around that, going outward, that next line of defense is your friends. And if the friends cannot help or give a loan or connect them, network them in some way, then that person who has lost their job and has financial troubles will go to their next line of the defense. And so that next ring around that is church. So that's when they go and they talk to their pastor or their priest, and they say, okay, well, I've got a problem. I've lost my job. I might need some charity. I might need, to network somehow in the church. Can you help me in some way with this problem that I've got? And if for some reason the church can't help, which we all know when we're church-going people that's kind of rare. The churches can offer a lot of help to people. If for some reason the church can't help, then the final ring, the final line of defense is the government. And that's who they would go to very last. Now ask yourself this question: when someone loses their job nowadays in the United States, what do they go to first? Who do they go to first?
Government.
Yeah, government.
Yeah. So you see, we're off. We're off what we're supposed to be. Now that's the only time I ever talk about government when I talk about self-government. But the reason why I share that is because it is part of our roots to be a self-governing people, but in our society we've lost what that means or how to do it. We're very, very dependent. We go straight to the government or other people to meet our needs before we start problem solving, and it is because we are lacking the skills. That is the reason. And those skills have to be learned by the self in the home with the family, and I start by teaching 4 basic skills. So there's a long answer to your short question, but hopefully complete anyway. What else do you want to know? Anything else? Wendy is frozen. Oh, there you go.
Okay, am I back now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, oh, and one thing I wanted to mention too is hang around, those of you who are watching, till the end of the session, and Nicolene is going to tell us how we can get a freebie that they've put together just for us. So we'll get to that just a little bit later, but I wanted to go ahead and mention it. All right, Tanya, do you have anything to ask before we go on to our next question for Nicolene?
Well, I just wanted to say that I was very happy when I started the program. I am almost done with it. I haven't implemented every single aspect of it. I figured that even though I read all the materials and I listened to everything, that adding things progressively will make us more successful, just because if you add 20 things at a time, then it will take longer to get that consistency going. And so if we can be consistent with a couple of things at a time, then we will be more successful. We will start seeing change, be more encouraged to keep going. And so that's what we have been doing. And now we are towards the end, where we are beginning our couples meetings and our family meetings and our mentor meetings, as well as our sodas, which isn't actually pop.
Not actually
not the drink.
Yeah.
And so we really like that. Those are like scenarios that you discuss ahead of time, things that I have found myself disciplining my children on, and it's just so much better when we discuss them ahead of time. And so you have the disadvantages and the advantages to all of the options. For example, I made a binder for those, and they're part of our devotional time. It's just lined paper, and I do the acronym SODAs, and so we talk about different scenarios, and it's really cool to see how they come up with their own options, and they come up with their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, one that you used was the going to the supermarket.
Oh, yes.
Nicolene, going to the supermarket, and your options are to run around and to be taking things off the shelf even though we don't need them, or to stick with mom, you know. And so you talk about the advantages, disadvantages, and then the best solution. And so next time when you go to the supermarket, you just remember that SODA's conversation that you had, and it makes it so much easier because there has been that process. Instead of just telling them, stay with me, they haven't processed through it all. So it's really cool to see how...
But what you're talking about there is pre-teaching the children. So when you teach someone self-government, it's a proactive process. And usually parenting people do in a reactive state. So they say, well, if there's a problem, I'll handle it. Right? And so they'll make up whatever the answer to that problem is going to be right then, instead of preparing the family ahead of time for there not to be a problem. And so what you're talking about is that the SODAS exercises are fantastic problem-solving exercises, and you're talking about how you're using them as a pre-teach to prepare the children, so then when you're in the store, you don't have to nag. That's a beautiful thing, to not have to turn into that nagging parent, because then you get stress and you're not enjoying the time with your children. And I'll tell you what, homeschooling should make your family the happiest place on earth. It really should. It is the best choice I ever made. I never knew my family could be this happy. And a key piece to that, in fact, the piece to me being able to do all the things that I do, as well as doing the homeschooling, is that everyone is self-governing, and it's because I've pre-taught them ahead of time. So I think we need to say Tanya has been on the implementation course.
Yeah.
So on teachingselfgovernment.com, in the shopping section, there's different things. There's children's books and adult books and audios, and there's a course, and it's called the implementation course. And if a person can't come to a couples retreat or have me come to their home, which is pretty rare, I only do it about 6 times a year, if that can't happen, the best thing I've got is that implementation course, because it takes you piece by piece. Now, Tanya, you've done it really fast to prepare for this conversation, but people could take a lifetime if they wanted. There's so much, information there. And it sounds like that you were very wise, even though you went through so much of it, that you said, well, we're going to just take this piece and then take this piece and kind of add to it. And that is a line upon line type learning process that's very natural and is really the reason I made that course, because a lot of people will read the book, Parenting a House United, and they go, whoa, where do I start? My brain's so full, it's so good, but what do I do now? And so I took everything in the book and expanded it and spread it out in the course so that people could just hear a class or watch a movie and just do one little step and one little thing and then do an assignment for themselves and then move on to the next thing. So I'm glad that you did it that way, or that you are doing it that way, even though you went through it so quickly.
So about the sodas, I said all of that to ask the question about it. I started the sodas during our devotional time because it's it's just really good to spark conversations and to get us thinking, and then we tie it into the Bible and everything. I realized that even though my 3.5-year-old was there and she was absorbing it all, she wasn't quite participating. My 5.5-year-old was like going all in. He was very interested, and he was coming up with all kinds of ideas and advantages, disadvantages, and everything. And I know that the scenarios that I was presenting were more geared towards him than my youngest. But would it be okay to do sodas with children that young, as 3.5-year-olds, or do we just let them sit in and kind of listen?
Well, it depends. Some 3.5-year-olds are better at problem solving than others, and some are a little bit more aware, like self-aware, than others are. Some are really emotional at that age, and so the logical is like really behind, and that can be the case too. I think you can talk through any of those things, with the children, so long as you feel like they can stay with you. If she can't stay with you at age 3.5, I used to play another little game, and I talk about it in the book, with my children when they were little. In fact, I loved to play it in the car. So I love that you're having a set time to practice problem solving, like right with your devotional. That's so good. I used to always just do it in the car. And every time we'd get in the car, we'd just start problem solving because we had to drive to the doctor or somewhere. And anyway, and we would play this little game. The game was called the What If game. And I would say, let's play the What If game. And they'd go, oh, yeah. And I would say, okay, Paige, what if Mom told you to take your garbage to the big trash can in the kitchen and you didn't want to? What would you do? What could you do? And she'd go, well, I could be whiny, but I wouldn't. I would say, okay. And so she would think about it. And so then she wouldn't have to go through the entire process. It was super simple because she was tiny. And so, and then we would add other little things in there, like safety things, What if your ball ran into the road? What would you do, right? So little things like that, and they would, think about it. So that little what if game was kind of my precursor for my little toddlers before I started doing full sodas exercises with them when they got to be about 4 or 5. So, but at the same time, if you're doing it with brother, when I had older ones doing them and the younger ones were just there in tow, then it's, you can kind of add everybody in and just see how they do. I think it's smart what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually. In fact, I'm really excited to hear your questions. I know Wendy's got some questions and things, and then Tanya too, and I think it's really great to hear how things are coming along with the stuff that you've been learning.
So one thing, Nicolene, that I'd like to talk about is, I know Tanya has younger kids. Hers are 3.5 and 5.5, but your program actually is for all ages. And if you would like to take just a minute to tell us a bit about how it got started, how the whole Teaching Self-Government program got started, because I know you originally worked with some older children too. So this is not something that's relevant to just those with preschoolers and small children.
Oh yeah, that's important, actually. I appreciate you bringing that up. So when I started learning these skills, I had two little ones of my own. They were 3 and 1, but then I was doing foster care for youth ages 12 to 18. So what happened was my husband changed employment, and here I was going to be homeschool mom with 2 little kids, a 3-year-old son who was already starting to read, and I thought, well, here we go, we're launched. And then my husband decides it's time to change careers, and it was really necessary, which was hard, and I thought, oh no, what are we going to do? And his career required extra schooling and a real big drop in pay. And so I am a God-fearing girl, and I just went to God and said, what do you want me to do? I've got to take care of these kids, and I also really want to, you know, homeschool them and teach them. I feel like I should. And I just found out about this place right shortly after that called the Utah Youth Village, and it's a troubled youth facility. And so I contacted them and went through their training to turn our home into a treatment home. And we would bring in the most difficult kids that the state had to offer. Most of them had been perpetrators or had been perpetrated on. They had been in gangs, drugs, addictions, teen moms, ADHD, OCD, ODD, RAD, compulsive lying, anger control issues. There was one girl who had almost all those things on her list. Anyway, I mean, there was just, you know, kind of like the hardest kids you could find, the ones that had been in lockup or had been at wilderness programs and, you know, things like that to try and straighten their lives out. And so we took them in, and the training we had was fantastic. When we had the training, it was the first night of the training. I looked at my husband and I said, they're teaching these things, like, you know, they're talking about deliberate skills for this is how you do a handshake. This is how you know, whatever it is. And I thought, this is, I mean, as like, it's common sense. Like, do you really have to teach a person how to do a handshake? You know, oh, well, then you could ask yourself, I teach these 4 basic skills. The main one is following instructions or accepting a no answer. Do you really have to teach a person how to accept a no answer? Well, the answer is yes, and you know that because when you tell the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old, no, you can't have that, what do? They melt, and they have a problem. They don't know how to handle it because they haven't learned that skill yet. So these actually are skills that we do have to learn, and it's a natural thing. And I just remember feeling like, why don't parents know this? Why don't they know that they could just teach a skill, just any random skill that they wanted? And, you know, I felt like it would be so cool if people before they had kids could even learn these things. But, of course, I was going to take on these kids. I didn't have time to think about that. And then after I started bringing these kids home to behavior train them, that's what we were told we were learning, was behavior training, or behavior modification, actually. I realized there's got to be more to it than that. It can't just be about behaviors. Even though I'm glad to separate the person from the behavior, that's important. But it has to be about changing their heart. If they're going to be on a different track for the rest of their life, their heart has to have a significant change. And so I started looking at the truths and the principles and the things that I understood about what made good communication and what didn't, and how to strengthen a relationship, and what kind of an environment needed to exist in a home. I realized there needed to be a tone that was loving and calm and strong and safe, and you know that there had to be that security that would exist while all the teaching was happening, and it came from the calmness, and that I, as a very fiery personality, had to do that. That was for me. I had to be calm. And then I realized there needed to be a structure. There needed to be skills. So I developed this for the kids that were in my home to hopefully help them have a change of heart, and we were really successful. And after a short time, people started saying, hey, will you come talk to our homeschool support group? Will you come talk at our homeschool conference? Will you come talk at our church? Will you come talk, you know, at our parents group? And so people just started asking me to speak, and I didn't think much of it. I just did it because I wanted to help. And then people started wanting more and more, and I made audio, you know, seminars and stuff like that. And then in 2009, the BBC contacted my family and asked us to be on a program called The World's Strictest Parents. And when I was on there, they brought us 2 troubled British teens from the United Kingdom, both ages 17, to stay in our home for 8 days. And after that, they were so changed. In fact, after 2 days, they were so changed that they didn't want to leave our home, basically. They were begging to leave our home. And they wanted their lives to be different. So they'd caught the American dream by tasting self-government and calmness and seeing what a family could be in our home. So that answers my question. I don't know if we're having sound problems. I can hear everybody, I think, but I'm just checking.
Yeah, I don't know if Wendy can hear us. Wendy, can you hear us?
Maybe not. Okay, well, maybe she's just going to keep... I just hope there's nothing wrong with the recording.
No, I think it should be fine.
Okay, it's probably just something on her computer, because I can hear her, actually. Okay. All right, so Wendy's actually asking a question because she doesn't know that we can hear her. I'm going to tell her that.
It's about creating a family vision.
Okay, Nicolene, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm really sorry. I can't hear anything at all. My sound is completely out. So I'm going to tell you the next couple of things I was going to ask you, and I hope you didn't already talk about them. And then maybe you can just type in the chat there and let me know when you're ready for another question if I can't hear. Yeah, I already tried unmuting and checking my sound and all that. I really have no idea what happened. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll tell you the next couple of things I was going to ask you about, and then I'll see if I can figure out what's going on. One of the things that I was going to ask about is creating a family vision, and to ask you to tell us about how this vision can help us with the day-to-day challenges of self-government. And then I was going to move on. Well, go ahead and address that one, and then I'll hopefully get this straight.
I'll do that one. So the family vision is key, actually. So the book, Parenting a House United, is broken into 3 sections, and on the course, we also break the course into 3 sections. And one of those sections is the roots section, or in the book, it's section number 1, and that is all about understanding self-government and creating a vision of where your family's going, what kind of relationships you want to have. This is the reason why your family would even care about self-government at all, actually. So they have to have an investment of some sort. And this is just an analysis. So whenever you're learning self-government, there's a lot of analysis that happens all the time. So you analyze, make a plan, execute, and then see how you did. Analyze, make a plan, execute, see how you did. So there's analysis at the beginning and analysis at the end. When you're teaching a skill, those analysis stages are pre-teach at the beginning, and if you've ever had to correct a problem, you pre-teach at the end. So you're constantly analyzing over and over again. And I'm glad, Tanya, I'm seeing you shake your head, and I know that you're going, oh yes, I get that. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, I'm actually, it's one of my favorite parts. The family vision, the family standard, all of those are great.
Yeah, yeah.
It really changed the way I was seeing things. Instead of living on the day-to-day, it was like, wait, we're working towards a goal. We have this vision of our family and what we want it to look like. Yeah. So, yes, explain that. It's so great. It's so great.
It is. It was an idea I had. I had been teaching self-government for quite some time, and all of a sudden it occurred to me that one of the things that set me apart from other people was, in my mind, I had this picture of this kind of family that we would be. It was even had the ways that we would interact, the kind of important topics that we would discuss, the way that we would look at each other and feel about each other when we were in each other's presence. And And I just felt like I just have that. That's something that I've done, but I wonder if other people have not done that and they're still just trying to put out fires. And if it's only just about the fires, then the family lacks the motivation to put in all of the effort that they could. And so I presented this idea that a family should look ahead and say, okay, 20 years from now, or if your kids are older, maybe they're in their teens, maybe you say 10 years from now. Okay, 10 years from now, we're all together as a family. We're at our favorite holiday, whatever it happens to be. For my family, that's Christmas. And what is it going to be like? What are we going to be talking about? What is the feeling going to be there? Who might be there that's not in our family currently? Are there going to be children? Are there going to be spouses or other people that possibly could be there? I mean, we're not, putting too much pressure on those things because you never fully know. But still, putting those things that possibly in our family as well. And I like the idea of putting those in because I want my children to think generationally. I want them to see that that life is about what you leave, and one of the greatest legacies that you leave is forming and changing the lives of another person, so that parenthood is important. But anyway, so we talk about this and what it feels like, and then the way that we use that so often is when things are going maybe a little wrong. Maybe it's an off day, or maybe there's some kids who are, arguing about who gets this or who gets this, and then I'll just tell everybody, stop. Do you feel that feeling? Does that feel like our Christmas party 10 years from now? Does that feel like that, when we're all in the circle and we're playing that game that we always play on Christmas, does that feel that way? And they'll go, oh no, Mom, you're right. And then they'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. And so that's a neat thing for them to assess that. So it's part of the reason why we would then do a correction. So then I'd follow that up with, okay, so this is what you were doing. This is what you need to be doing. Let's practice this the right way. And then oftentimes in our family they earn negative consequences too, which are usually always a chore. They could be very simple chores, like I need you to put that book on the shelf. Or it could be a more complicated chore, like you need to clean the bathroom. But those chores are important. They are a quick repentance. And I believe in that. I believe that when a person has had a change of heart, they should not have to have their consequence, at least when they're in their years where they're just learning to control themselves. They shouldn't have to not have a snack for the whole rest of the day if they have just, forgotten to say okay and to follow an instruction. But they should be able to be corrected, earn another little extra chore because it's quick for them to straighten the pillows on the couch or to take out a garbage. And see that they are able to accept it and accomplish it quickly. It builds confidence, and then they do whatever it was that they were supposed to do the right way as well. There's high fives, there's praises. So when we talk about creating the type of environment, the family vision is huge, because then it leads right into why a correction would need to occur. I'm going to just signal Wendy here. Bless her heart, she probably still can't hear us. So.
All right, can you hear me, Nicolene?
Uh-huh.
Yes, okay. I have no idea what's going on. I'm really sorry. Okay, next I was going to ask about your discussion about deep water parenting and how we've been called to do the hard part, the things that nobody else wants to do. And you talked about that it's challenging to stay focused and not get distracted by the other swimmers. Can you share some words of encouragement about why we need to stay focused on our goal and not on everyone else?
That is a really good question. Good job. I like that question because that question shows that you are thinking about, possibly some of the pitfalls, I guess, the stumbling blocks that some parents can have, that they can look at somebody, the next door neighbor, or that other mom in the homeschool group, and they can say, wow, she's really got it together. She's like perfect, and I'm terrible at this. Maybe I should give up. Maybe I'm not meant for it, or that kind of a thing. And I think, there's one of the things that I've always thought as a homeschooler. This is one of my homeschool philosophies, but obviously this could be applied to anybody, even if they're not a homeschooler. But that is that God sent a child to me. God sent children to me. He didn't send them to the government, and he didn't send them to a school or to an agency or anything else. He sent them to me, which means he had faith in me that I would figure it out and that I would be able to be good at it, even if I am not perfect at first. And so when parents are struggling, I think it's supernatural to look around and even in the effort of looking for help and end up getting discouraged along the way. But and it's normal to have those discouraging moments. I think there's a lot of moms who struggle with discouraging moments. I know there are, because I have a conference call where I answer parents' questions with the support group every week. And there are oftentimes parents who will come on there and just tell me they just feel like giving up because their kids are difficult or they're having such a hard time self-governing themselves. And it's possible, it's step by step. Self-governing us is the hardest thing, So hopefully that answers your question. Oh, wait. Unmute. She's she's not unmute.
She's muted.
Yeah, she's not, I'm typing in unmute, but
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, sorry. If you would talk about the part of your book where you said family is first, so everything else is second, because that's hard. That's really hard sometimes to do. What does that actually look like on a day-to-day basis? How do you make sure that you put family first and everything else below that where it needs to be? And then after that, if you want to talk about how you help the rest of the family to start looking at your family vision as your goal. Should you do it as a joint exercise? How would you actually go about doing that?
Oh, those are good questions. So the first, and both of them relate to our family culture. So one thing that sets apart all of the parents that were in that World's Strictest Parents movie that the BBC made of our family, so there were many families. Ours was the most watched episode because we were so calm. People saw something they didn't see in any of the other episodes, and that was true love and calmness instead of anger and manipulation. But one thing that every one of those families had, even if they were angry, was they had deliberately decided what their family culture would be like. So they said, this is the kind of family that we want to be. And then they found friends who would support that and also usually base that on their religious beliefs. Those were kind of the three pillars for every family that they had on those shows. And that's a huge thing because a family needs to know who they are and what they're doing, and they need to know that's the most important. I think what you're referring to here is the area where I talk about a family mission too, how the idea of this family is together for a reason, that we're supposed to be accomplishing things together and somehow nurturing each other, but also preparing each other for things that we'll do to leave this world a better place. So that is a big part of putting family first as well. So for me, I say no to things. I on purpose say no to things, even if my children are getting to an age where, oh, they're older, they could do all of these things. If I feel that they are too disconnected from family, we pull back. And that is our number one. And because if we don't have enough time, and I'm talking hours in the day, if we look at our day and we say, okay, how many hours are we spending together as a family? And that doesn't include when they're reading their own book as school time. So family time would be like we are learning together, we're playing together, we're going on a walk together, cooking cookies together or something, or even working together. How many hours a day do we have? How many hours a day do we have at lessons and activities at the church and stuff like that? And if we are out of balance with friends and lessons, if we have way less time as a family, then we have a family couples meeting, usually decide where to adjust, and then have a family meeting and talk about it with everybody and decide where to adjust as well. The second part of your question was how do we present the idea of a family vision to our family. And what we do is we gather the family together and talk about, well, what's our favorite holiday, or what do we like to do as a family? Maybe the family likes to go camping or something like that. And then you talk about what kind of a family do we want to be? And then you can list those things. If the children are too small, it really is better for the parents to just make the plan and then present it to the family. And if the children are incredibly obstinate or negative or really do not like family relationships, again, it's good for the parents to make a vision. Each of them make their own vision. They share them together. Then they come together and share that with the family, and then let the family add input. And at that point, then what I usually suggest is to say, okay, 2 weeks from now or 2 months from now, let's have a practice. So if we want to be a certain kind of family for this Christmas party, well, how about in 2 weeks from now we have a party? And it doesn't have to be Christmas, but let's just have a party, and let's just really focus on having it feel that way. So having practice times. The cool thing about having a holiday is at least once a year you get to have a practice. In our family, we try to practice every Sunday afternoon for what it's going to feel like. Of course, we want it to be that way every day, but we on purpose try to think about Sunday afternoon as like the perfect, because it's kind of like nothing's going on, you know, this wonderful holiday time. So anyway, yeah, there's the answer to those questions. Tanya, I don't know if you have any questions. I know you said you had a few.
Yes, I know that one of the steps in
the next thing that I wanted to ask you about is if you had to give one piece of advice or one resource to today's homeschool parents, one bit of information, what would that be?
Oh, wow. One piece of advice to homeschoolers or to families in general, I would say that one piece of advice is to not worry when someone is making a mistake, to not take it personally, because that is a big deal. A lot of people, there's a lot of bad behaviors out there now. There's addictions that are severe that when we were kids weren't nearly like they are now. Gaming addictions and pornography addictions and all these kinds of things that kids can get into when you don't know. And so I would definitely say that you've got to prepare yourself that when something like that happens, that you're not going to take it personally, be disgusted by your child, angry at your child, but instead be proactive and say, okay, so I accept this is what happened, or this is what's going on. Now let's make a plan for the future. We don't need to get stuck right here. And I think that proactive mindset will put a child at ease, being that safe person, you know. No matter what happens, you are safe. I think that's huge. Safe does not mean you don't do anything about it. You always do something about it because you help them learn cause and effect and you help them problem solve it. But you don't get emotional about it. Now, what that means is calmness. If you're going to be safe like that, you have to have calmness. That is the number one hardest thing for any parent to have, is the calmness.
It definitely is.
It is. It's the hardest thing. In fact, parents will come up to me all the time and they'll say, it's that calmness. I was at a homeschool conference this last year. I can't remember where it was, but this woman came up to me and she said, Nicolene, I heard you speak 2 years ago on calmness. And I want to report to you, we've done very good at self-government, but the calmness was the hardest thing. And finally, here I am 2 years later, and I want you to know I have finally mastered calmness. And I was like, yay! That's a good thing. And so she was so proud of herself because she was the sweetest thing too. You'd never think she'd ever not be calm. She said, oh no, behind closed doors I'm a monster. I said, okay. She was able to conquer that. So that's probably the biggest thing, being calm, being safe, being ready for anything to happen. Now Tanya, you said you had a question.
Yes, I know that part of the program includes meetings. There are several meetings, and I have a binder for that too. I
Good.
have everything in one binder right now, and as we add more pages, then I'll move them into their own separate binders. So the first one, the red one, is the couples meeting, and my husband and I find some time together to talk about different situations in our family and talk about certain behaviors that we want our children to work on and how we're going to approach that, and things are going on in the family. And then we have the second divider, which is the family meeting. And I was trying to figure out the best way to do it, and I find that since everybody is in the car on the way to church on Sundays, that we can just have our family meeting there. And then I have one divider for each of my children for their mentor meetings, and those are one-on-one with mom and dad, but with the one child at a time. So I wanted to do the little introduction. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the meetings, but basically my question about it was, I did ask you about mentor meetings with the 3.5-year-old previously, and then the other question is, what do you do with your children during your couples meetings? Right now it's kind of like a hit or miss, like, do we do it now? Do we do it now? You know, like, and also, what do the other children do when you're having the mentor meeting, since both mom and dad are with the one child at a time? And you have mentioned having the children not together but separate.
Yeah.
So that was my main question, because I'm trying to figure things out. And so I don't want to sit them in front of the TV or give them technology to keep them entertained.
Right, right. And that's super smart, actually, because for some little brains, that could even be more of a draw than the connection time with mom and dad. And you don't want to be competing with that, actually, if it's on in a room for somebody else. That time with mom and dad should be so valuable, and they should look forward to it so much. So what I would probably do is have, okay, so when my children were little, my husband and I would often have our couples meetings, like either during nap time on Sunday, so the kids would take a little nap, and we would do that. But if they didn't nap, then like when they got slightly older and they weren't really napping, then what we would do is we would actually have a date every Saturday night, and we would have it in the evening at night. So you could even say, okay, every Saturday night we put the kids to bed, we have a couples meeting, and then we have a little date of our own or something like that. Even if you didn't go anywhere, you could do that, and it would be pretty good. So that would probably be one good way. There will come a point where you want them to know you're having that meeting, you know. And maybe you just tell them every Saturday night's our couples meeting, and so we have to go to bed at this time, and that's just, you know, our bedtime for on Saturdays because of couples meeting, and the kids then know that that's happening. As far as the family meeting goes, it sounds like you're okay on that because everybody's all together. But when you're in the mentor meetings, and those are those one-on-one meetings with the children, you've got two, right? You have two children? Yeah? Okay. So,
Yes.
so if you have two children, one thing you could do is, if they're really busy and they won't, you know, stay in another area, what I probably would do would encourage that by having a special basket of something. Like maybe there's Play-Doh that comes out, or something where it's like, okay, it's your Play-Doh time and it's your mentor meeting time. And then we're going to switch in 15 minutes, and you get Play-Doh time, and then you get mentor meeting time. So I would probably have something like that. That would be the ideal. But if it doesn't work that way, then what you could do is weekly you could switch off, where your husband meets with your son and you meet with your daughter, and then the next week you switch.
Okay.
And then you could do it simultaneously, and that would work as well. If you can, try to have a little special basket or a special activity that's something they only do during that time.
Okay. That's a really good idea.
Okay, good.
I'll try that.
All right. I know that Wendy wanted me to talk about the 4 basic skills slightly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have any questions relating to those, but let me just briefly tell people what they are, because when people think about teaching self-government, usually they think, oh, there's these 4 skills because I have those 4 children's books that teach, each one of them teaches the skills. Oh, and you were telling me your kids liked those books, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about what your children think of the books.
They love the books. They are books that are read pretty much daily, initiated by them. I started reading one each day during our devotional time before I incorporated sodas. I was reading one of those, so 4 days in our devotional time, and they were glued. They were just watching me and the expressions, and they were like, oh, that makes sense. Mom has been using that same wording. I could see the little light bulbs going off, It was really cute. And they really do love them. I highly, highly recommend them because I felt that everything I was implementing and doing, it made, once I read the books, it really brought it home for the children. It really brought it home because the books explain it really well. It's the same skills, but in different situations, the 4 different scenarios, and how to apply them in different scenarios, but the exact same 4 skills. And so it was so great. They are amazing. And then the fact that they are rhyming, it was also fun. So the way I was reading it, they were just glued. Like I said, they really loved those. And my 5.5-year-old can read very well. He's at an upper elementary level in reading, and so he just takes one at a time to his room, and he starts reading them to his sister, and they really enjoy them. So I'm glad we have those.
I love that. I remember you telling me that they just loved those books. So thank you so much for sharing that. I just wanted to briefly tell what the 4 basic skills are. So 99.9%, like pretty much all behaviors, negative behaviors, can be corrected by learning one of the 4 basic skills. The first one is following instructions, and there are 5 steps to following instructions. You look at the person, keep a calm face, voice, and body, say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, which is another skill, another one of the 4 basic skills. And then you do the task immediately and then check back. So often a parent will say to their child, okay, Billy, I need you to go and make your bed. And he goes, okay, and then he goes to his room, and that whiny thing and the slouchy. Well, if the parent knows all 5 of those things have to be done for an instruction to actually be followed, and that the child's heart is probably not in the right place if he can't do all of those, then she can say, oh, you know what, you need to have a calm face, voice, and body. And that's what's not happening, is you're not having that calm face, voice, and body. Sorry, I gotta plug in my computer, otherwise it's going to die. All right, there we go. Oh, and I lost light, but oh well, that's okay.
You look fine.
Great. Anyway, so those, and then that's the first skill, the following instructions. There's 3 other skills. I won't go into all the steps, but there's the second one is accepting no answers and criticism. Then the third one is accepting consequences. And then the fourth one is disagreeing appropriately. And really, truly, the skill that makes the biggest difference for the kids who want to be understood is disagreeing appropriately. The skill that most children need, no matter their age, is how to accept no answers. That is like the biggest. That's where the tantrums and the attitude problems come, is because they don't know that skill. And then the skill that makes parenting possible is following instructions. And then the skill that teaches cause and effect is accepting a consequence. So it's all in there in those 4 basic skills. Anyway, I know, Tanya, you said you had another question, right?
Yes. Well, you answered the first question about sodas and how early you can start them, and you mentioned the what if game. And then another question I had was about the parents and following the implementation course. You have so many materials that are so incredibly helpful. I cannot even tell you like how helpful they have been for me and how they are really helping our family dynamic. So basically you have the book, which is this one right here, the book, and then you have the online portion, and you have the children's books, and then the option of having the journals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the family meetings and the couples meetings and the mentor meetings.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of materials, and on the online portion you have the recordings and the videos that we can listen to and watch, and those have been amazing. The family standard one is my favorite, I gotta say. It just brought tears to my eyes as I was listening to it. I really love that one. And the whole reasoning behind it, I love to listen your children's perspective on it too. So anyway.
That's a lot of people's favorite, because my children, we did an interview, so that people know, we did an interview with my 2 children, and they were sharing what they thought of having family standards, and I think a lot of people share your opinion on that one.
It is amazing, and I was thinking, oh, I want my children to be like that when they are their age. And so basically the way I went about it was I had a trip, and so I took this book with me, and this is all I read on my flights and on my downtime and everything. So I got probably 3/4 through the book before I actually delved into the online portion. And so then once it's also divided, like you said, roots, and then the trunk, and then the leaves. So you build the foundation with the roots part, and then you keep building your tree as you go through the recordings and all that. So since I was already so advanced in the book, so many things were clicking. And it made so much sense. Like, you give so many examples and ideas on how to implement those principles, and so it was really great to do that. And then the last bit of the book, I was doing like a little bit of the book, a little bit of the recordings, back and forth, and I also felt like that was beneficial. So would you recommend that people read the book first, or they do the recordings first, or they do them simultaneously? What would be the preferred method?
That is a really good question. Every person is slightly different. Originally, when I made the course, I knew that people had the book, and the majority of people who wanted more help and wanted this course, because the course does go into more depth on some of the things than the book is able to do. And in fact, I add even more knowledge there in the course. But I knew that the people who would want the course probably had read some, or maybe even all of the book, or listened to my old audio seminar set, which we still have, which is kind of the closest to an audiobook. Anyway, and so I wanted those people to be able to get additional help and see how they could break down the pieces. So that was originally how I intended it, although so many people now just want to go straight to the course. They say, they look at the book and the size of the book, because not everybody's a reader, you know, and they'll see that it's not super thin, you know. I mean, it's like 380 pages or something. And so they, yeah, look, I like that.
Yes, 377.
Okay.
Or 78 if you count the back one.
Okay, there you go. So lots of them go, you know what, I'm not going to read that. And I know I need a step-by-step approach. And so they'll just go straight to the course, and then I'll say, well, with the course comes the book. So what you can do is, when you're in that section of the course, then you can go to that book, and you can, if you want more from that section, if you feel like you want to, see another example, or if you want to just, read through that section at that time, then you can. And so actually there are people still kind of doing both. I would say the majority of people nowadays are doing what you did at the end, kind of doing it at the same time. But there are some people who like to check one thing off of a list and then do another thing. And so for them, I would say, yeah, read the book, get the overview, and then on the course go deep and see all the examples and start putting it into practice then. Because the course is really helpful for seeing how to put it into practice. Where the book just gives, I shouldn't say just, the book has tons, but it gives you the layout of all of it. But it's a lot to, just feel like you have to throw in all at one. Some people feel like they have to put it all in or they can't do any of it, and that's not true. They can pick one piece and still experience a change significantly. So that's a super good question. I like that. The implementation course is so valuable, and I'm so glad that it was helpful for you.
Mm-hmm. So you're still doing the weekly calls?
Yes, I am. In fact, when you buy an implementation course, you get automatically a free month of the support group. And the support group is weekly calls with me. Now, it's a group call. I can't have individual calls with everybody. It's too much. But I do a group call, and people will submit their questions. We have a way to have questions submitted, and then I will read questions and answer the questions. And anyway, and then they'll get their questions answered live right then on the call, and we record it and we send it out to everybody. So if you can't make it on the call, no big deal, and all that kind of stuff too. So people love that, and if they want to stay on the support group after that 1 month, it's just $9.95 a month. So it's super cheap for weekly calls with me.
Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if is that your last question, Tanya, or did you have?
Yes.
Okay, that's your last one. Let me just see if Wendy wants to ask anything else. Okay.
Okay, I did have one last question, and I was going to ask, is it ever too late, or is there ever a child, does the child ever get too old? Is there ever a time when you would say, this program is not going to help your child?
That's a really great question, and I think some people really do feel like there is a time when possibly they're too old, that it's not going to make a difference. But actually, no. The principles in this will help a husband and wife who've never had children or who don't have children anymore. There's no reason that a loving husband and wife wouldn't disagree appropriately with each other, or accept no answers from each other, or even follow instructions from each other. So often nowadays in our modern world, we think that a loving relationship means that you would never ask a person to do something for you, that you wouldn't inconvenience them in that way, when actually it's just the reverse, that when you love someone, then we know that they would be able to follow an instruction from that person that they love. So, no, it's for anybody whenever. I think we wouldn't have as many people in the prisons if everyone could learn these 4 basic skills, and if parents could learn how to correct their children calmly and predictably and deliberately, assertively. Those are some of my favorite words. Predictable, calm, deliberate, assertive. That is what teaching self-government should be. And I have had youth come into my home who are like a week short of 18 years old, and they are able to transform just like that. And so, no, I think when it's truth, it speaks to them. And once they start doing it, it speaks to them. If the child is really resistant, which some are, they're usually trying to hold on to a kind of a lie that has helped them disconnect in their relationship. And you just have to address that. So that would be my answer to that question. And I think I remember there being another question that you were going to ask, and I'm trying to see if I can remember it since you're having audio problems.
You were going to talk about the freebie.
Oh, I can definitely do that. I do feel like there was something else that when I was talking to Wendy last week that she said, what about this? And I said, oh, you should ask that when we meet next week so that I don't answer it now. And I can't remember what it is. But, oh, well, that's okay. But, yes, I do have a freebie, and that is the Popular Parenting Methods ebook, audio class, audio download, and video, as well as the video of the world's strictest parents. All of those together in a package, and they are free if you go to my website, and which is teachingselfgovernment.com, and you have to spell the government all the way out. If you go to teachingselfgovernment.com, right there on the home page on the right-hand side, it says sign up here for the free Popular Parenting Methods ebook and video and audio class, and do that and we'll send it to you. We'll send it to your inbox and you can have that. And that is the class that when I am teaching groups of people, if I go spend a day with a group, or if I'm going to spend 3 days with a group and do a couples retreat, that is the first class that I give. It always is, so that we can get all the parents on the same page, and so that all the parents have the opportunity to do an assessment of themselves, so that they can see where the troubles are occurring and which direction they need to go in their parenting. It is a fantastic class. Listen to the audio in the car with your husband or your wife, and even your children, and it probably will spark some pretty amazing conversation.
And all of this information will be posted in the review that goes live on hiphomeschoolmoms.com at the beginning of October.
Okay. Fabulous.
Okay. Thank you, Nicolene, very much for being here with us. I apologize for the audio trouble and all that, but I think you and Tanya took over and handled everything perfectly. Thank you, Tanya, so much for being here and for handling most of the interview and all that. Nicolene, if either of you wants to say one more thing, and then we're ready to wrap it up, and we'll have a link to this discussion when our review post goes live in early October. So we'll be putting in the Hip Homeschool Moms community and the Facebook page, we'll have this information there. So anybody who's interested, just keep watching over the next couple of weeks or so, and we'll have more information. And thanks both of you very much for being here.
Okay, well, thank you, Wendy, and I've had a great time. And thank you, Tanya, for being there, and I'm so glad I could hear you, or that you could hear me, rather. But when she says one more thing, I have this saying on my wall, and it's underneath our family picture, and it says, no other success can compensate for failure in the home. And that is kind of like one of my models, one of my things I always want to follow, that no matter if our children learn math or don't, no matter if they get to chemistry or don't, or can they quote the Constitution or not, whatever our passions are and the things we hope for them academically and even socially, there is nothing more powerful in their lives than the security that comes with that bond that is developed with their parents in the home.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing more important, and as homeschool parents, if we can remember that really is our most important lesson. That if that lesson is not happening, if things are chaotic and we're forcing math down their throats and with a wooden spoon in one hand because we're threatening, then we are destroying the greatest opportunity that little homeschool has, which is to create a very secure leader, because leaders are formed when people know how to control themselves. All the greatest leaders in the world, all the people that we look up to and we revere as true heroes, are the ones who were able to accept no answers, accept consequences, follow instructions, communicate appropriately, and disagree appropriately with people. They were the types of people who conquered their vices. And once they could do that, they were the strongest people. They were the sages of wisdom for all time. Our children are under attack in so many ways. I go to the United Nations, I go to legislatures and congresses, I talk to people about protecting and strengthening the family, and really what I'm talking about is protecting the consciences of the children. They are under attack in so many ways. There are too many things to be addicted to. There are too many false ideas out there that would lead them down paths that could be destructive and that would make their lives unfulfilled. There's selfishness that abounds everywhere. If they are going to win in this battle that's called life, which is really a battle for their souls and their consciences, they have to already possess the strength of self-control. Otherwise, they will have the next addiction and the next habit. So that's my final thought. I really appreciate being on. It's been a great time to talk with you all. So, bye-bye.